Like, they've dedicated entire pages to like how hard they nut to trans porn and why it must be banned. Like, what are you doing? The fuck? You're so weird, bro. Keep that shit to yourself. You know what I mean? The conservative plan to take over the country. You need to know about this from Leisha Miller. Okay?
/Miller. Thanks, PDS Debt. Launched in April 2022, Project 2025 is the brainchild of the far-right think tank, the Heritage Foundation, which deserves its own entire video for all the shady shit that they've been up to over the last 40
I'm surprised she hasn't done one, to be honest, on the Heritage Foundation.
plus years. Project 2025 is systematically building the future of the conservative movement and promoting policy objectives that would have devastating consequences not only in our government, but for—
No, not the female Johnny Harris. Come on. I've watched her videos. That's ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't say I don't think she's like a Marxist-Leninist or whatever, but that is so inappropriate. That's insane. I can't believe you just said that. She's like very well thought. Her videos are incredibly well thought out. They're super well fleshed out. She literally directly engages in materialist analysis when covering a lot of the stuff. I don't know if she's like a Marxist or anything like that, but I don't give a shit. She does a great job. Johnny Harris's coverage is oftentimes like just super surface level. Rarely ever diving deeper into the background and the minutia or why certain things happen throughout history. That's crazy.
For every person living in this country. That might sound hyperbolic, but I'm telling you, I cover a lot of batshit stories about conservatives, and this one has me spooked as hell, y'all. Their plan to further these goals has 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is the policy, embodied in that 920-page manifesto they dropped last month. Pillar number 2 is the personnel database. Described as the conservative LinkedIn, the objective of the database is to collect resumes and information for thousands and thousands of conservatives from all walks of life and industries in order to source the best candidates to pack every branch and administrative body in Washington and throughout the states. To ensure that this database of personnel and the chosen warriors who will infiltrate the government at every level are properly prepared to represent the conservative goals set forth in the policy, Project 2025 relies on pillar number 3, training. Through an online institute, Project 2025 will prepare the foot soldiers of the conservative agenda to push their policies from day one. And because they've been preparing for years, they will be ready on day 1 of the new conservative presidency thanks to pillar number 4. Pillar number 4 is the 180-day playbook, the step-by-step guide for the next conservative president to implement the policies laid out.
When people were bringing this up, I thought that Todd Howard calls out encumbered Starfield hoarders. No, you don't need the trays and the pencils. Yeah, this is such a dumb fucking aside that I'm not even going to get into because, like, why does it automatically join the inventory on your fucking spaceship then? I don't. But it's very stupid that, like, I literally will sell the dumbass shit and then it just rematerializes in the inventory again and again and again. So yeah, I don't want to have all that dumb shit on my spaceship inventory. So why does it keep rematerializing in my spaceship inventory? Perhaps, maybe, what you are saying does not actually work with what you have done. Okay? I don't want to have left slipper in the inventory. It just keeps existing in there every time I sell it. And it's not even like a fucking infinite money glitch because you make like not even half a cent. You would spend literally 3 hours like piece by piece selling all this shit, okay? And barely make $54. So it sucks. It's not even worth the time it consumes. When you make ship changes, it grabs shit from these modules into inventory. I know.
Out in the manifesto as quickly and systematically as possible in the first 180 days of their term. Through these 4 pillars, policy, personnel, training, and the playbook, Project 2025 aims to overhaul the entire US government from the inside out, putting in place draconian policies and gutting important government agencies, all in the name of the Constitution and good, white, Christian family values. Let's take
when I first encountered the 2025 or 2024 project or whatever it's called, I thought that it was like the WEF, you know what I mean? Like Project Reset or whatever the fuck they call it. Like more fluff than any like tangible, clear-cut, well-defined policy goals and positions. I'm still not entirely convinced, despite the fact that I know that Republicans are much better at like eviscerating the federal government, gutting it, destroying it, and deregulating at the behest of capital owners. So I am a little bit more fearful of it, but I do still think that it's still kind of like overblown, maybe.
Each pillar in turn, though we will be spending the bulk of our time on Pillar 1, the policy, because we have 920 pages to cover, and it is the most fleshed out and horrific part of the plan so far. Project 2025 published their 920-page Mandate for Leadership policy manifesto as a free PDF on their website. I considered getting a physical copy to be able to wave around for you just to see what it looks like printed, but that would require me to give $35 to the Heritage Foundation, so digital will do. That being said, I did not, unfortunately, read 920 pages of this thing, though I don't think it's a bad idea to do so. I did, however, read the first 50 pages of the PDF, including the list of organizers, authors, the introductory note, and the foreword, to get a good flavor of what's going on. And frankly, entire books could be and have been written on some of the batshit theories and doctrines they rely on just in the introduction alone. So we have plenty to dig into. Plus, the work of journalists who have pored over the manifesto at length will help us in our dizzying tour of the policies laid out in this manifesto, so let's get into it. The policy book is divided into 5 sections. 1. Taking the reins of government. 2. The common defense. 3. The general...
I just don't get it, because it's like, this already happened. You know what I mean? Like, Republicans have already done, like, what more are they going to do with the control that they have? Like, at that point, it's just for funsies. I guess they just want to, like, kill trans people for fun. Like, is that what they're going to do? Like, it's kind of like when Republicans end up accidentally or deliberately instituting or reversing Roe v. Wade, and creating a process in which, in many red states where abortion was already pretty much not illegal, but like very hard to get, now it's just completely illegal, right? Like, you just created a structure that will galvanize your opposition, and it is so entirely unnecessary. That's part of the reason why Republican Party currently is suffering from its own success, as I say all the time. So, like, what more do you want to do? Like, what will have you not enacted, at least at the state level in this fucking country? State level that allows you to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, with all the courts that you have stacked to the brim with Federalist Society perverts. Like, what more do you want out of the situation? Are you so horny that you want to, I guess, like, create concentration camps or something? Like, what's the reason for this? It doesn't make sense. They have everything. They have effectively, over the course of the past half of a century, been able to gut the power that Congress held. The legislative body is completely neutered, okay? They moved over to power to the state legislatures, where they actually win even when they lose the popular vote because of districting, okay, which another W for them. They've also basically padded the decks, padded every single level in the court system with Federalist Society perverts, all the way up to the Supreme Court. They have a Supreme Court supermajority that is seemingly permanent, unless, like, you know, something really funny happens and, like, all of the conservative, like, the young conservative Supreme Court justices, like, die in, like, a fucking plane accident or something. And so what more do you want? That is precisely the reason why they can get away with doing incredibly unpopular initiatives that hyper-focus on 1% of the population that most people don't even give a shit about, right? For example, all of the anti-trans legislation. Like, there is no real momentum towards anti-trans legislation. There is not really anyone on the ground who's like, this is really going to improve my material conditions. Like, this is, wow, I have a lot of economic anxiety, and, like, if only we could fuck over some trans people. Like, only the worst perverts fucking despise trans people to that degree. But they can do that. They can actually push that legislation every day. How can they do that? Well, they can do that because they own the states. They own the state legislatures. So I guess the next step in this process would be to move away from a federalist structure to one that actually gives more federal control to the executive, that and then they can just like implement federal bans at the federal level and start enforcing their agenda on blue states, which are the economic engine that drives the country in most cases. And that's their final goal, I guess. Like, because I'm thinking, like, what is the one area that they haven't been able to like enact their agenda? And I guess it's like blue states, right? So maybe they want to enforce their perspective on blue states as well. What? Soros AGs blanket the country. Just look at all the big cities and criminals that get turned loose. Yes, dude. I would also agree with you if I was a schizophrenic, a weirdo who literally was perfectly fine and had a healthy brain and then read too many posts and became schizophrenic. It can happen. Sometimes it's hereditary, and in other instances, it's just like I read too many posts, and now I believe that fucking George Soros is blanketing the country with George Soros-backed progressive district attorneys that are letting criminals go. A statement that you can only put out there, a statement that under any other circumstance would be considered so insane that you can only hear it from a dude standing on top of a soapbox outside of a metro station in one of these big cities with these progressive DAs, right? And yet now online, I can get that hand delivered to me by like not just one person, but a bunch of people who can, under the guise of anonymity, act like they're actually brilliant and not just completely batshit insane. Anyway, let's continue.
Welfare. 4. The economy. And 5. Independent regulatory agencies. The note at the beginning of the paper, authored by Project 2025 director Paul Dans, a former Trump official, lays out what's at stake. The long march of cultural Marxism through our institutions has come to pass. The federal government is a behemoth, weaponized against American citizens and conservative values, with freedom and liberty under siege as never before. The task at hand to reverse this tide and restore our republic to its original moorings is too great for any one conservative policy shop to spearhead. It requires the collective action of our movement. With the quickening approach of January 2025, we have 2 years and 1 chance to get it right. The language throughout the policy manifesto and the Project 2025 website is militant, clearly meant to play into the fears and the patriotic duty that far-right constituents feel so strongly, the same militant language that led to the righteous anger of the January 6th insurrection. The report starts with, "We want you." The 2025 Presidential Transition Project is the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration to govern at 12 noon, January 20th, 2025. Welcome to the mission. By opening this book, you are now a part of it. Indeed, one set of eyes reading these pages will be those of the 47th President of the United States, and we hope every other reader will join in making the incoming administration a success. And I know this, it's not explicitly about Trump, but listen, we all know that man is not reading a 920-page manifesto in the unlikely chance that he does take the White House in January 2025. Get real. But you get the vibe. This is positioned as a mandate, making readers, ostensibly the conservative foot soldiers who'll do their bidding, feel like they're in on a top secret mission. Like this is...
Okay, for the record, most Republicans, even in these photos, are not capable of reading 900 pages in a row. But you know who does? The producers at Fox News, the producers at Daily Wire, the producers at whatever the fuck Steven Crowder is doing now that haven't been sexually harassed into quitting their jobs. Okay, if he still has producers, that's probably what they're doing. They're reading this. So those guys always read this shit. That is why I always say when you talk to a conservative, you are basically addressing the exact same talking points, no matter how clever or how stupid they are, because they're very good at getting the talking points to be disseminated both through mainstream media with Fox News and also through independent outlets online through PragerU and Daily Wire and the entire conservative circuit. We do not have a similar thing on the left. We do not have the think tanks because obviously think tanks would need some level of consolidation of wealth to be able to launch that sort of thing. So you can't really do that. There's no business interest backing big left, right? The closest you can get to would probably be labor unions funding something like this, but labor unions are too busy fucking fighting fighting to claw back some level of labor power. that was stolen from them over the course of the past couple of decades, if not century. So they don't have any time and opportunity to do so. I try to do this as best as I possibly can with the limited amount of time that I have. There's only so many times in the day. But there's a reason why, down to the fucking gray name that comes in here to say, Trump, he's the best. You fucking suck. Whoa, bet you have nothing to say about Hunter Biden getting arrested, right? Like, you fucking idiot. You love Joe Biden. That guy got that talking point without even realizing it. He didn't read the Heritage Foundation footnotes. He just got that talking point through the conservative media machine. That is a very well-oiled machine that runs every fucking day. Okay? And it works to disseminate that information from the tippy top, from the think tanks all the way down to the average gray name. The advantage, of course, is that if you know those talking points, you can immediately destroy them, and it doesn't matter how brilliant the other person is, because it's usually always the same talking points. That's why I can always pre-watch videos without actually watching them, because I've duked it out against those talking points for 10 years.
Some G.I. Joe mission shit, because the authors know that that is the absolute conservative wet dream and they're playing into it. The foreword includes a tidy summation of all the conservative wedge issues and talking points that have been flying around over the last few decades, all of which are addressed at length in the document. Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging family budgets, drug overdose deaths continue to escalate, and children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Overseas, a totalitarian communist dictatorship in Beijing is engaged in a strategic.
Okay, I'm beginning to realize what the issue is. They realize that, like, conservative policies are not exactly popular, because a lot of people mistake the conservative agenda happening whether they voted for it or not with it being popular. That's why there's the meta of the silent majority, right? That's not the case. Is the can't shut the fuck up minority, but they think they're the silent majority, right? When in fact they are not. So instead, now they're just going, yeah, we realize that, like, there isn't really a lot of interest on the ground for a lot of the things that we're pushing for, and people kind of look at us as though we're gross, and we can't brainwash enough people in short time. So we should just, like, do the same thing that I've been describing. I, Hassan Piker, have been describing about how they manipulate state legislatures to make it seem like there is actual support for these positions. And just take over the entire government.
Cultural and economic Cold War against America's interests, values, and people, all while globalist elites in Washington awaken only slowly to that growing threat. Moreover, low-income communities are drowning in addiction and government dependence.
They're getting that good. They're addicted, I would say, to government dependence. Me, I'm addicted to Snap, man. It's so sick. I'm addicted to EBT, where I'm just drowning in it too. I'm like, oh no, I'm buying so many fudge rounds, dude. I'm 5'4", 320 pounds, and I'm fucking buying all the goddamn fudge rounds, baby. I'm addicted to fucking child tax credits.
Elites have even repurposed the worst ingredients of 1970s radical chic to build the totalitarian cult known today as the Great Awakening. Most alarming of all, the very moral foundations of our society are in peril. The foreword goes on to list the 4 broad fronts that the policy mandate will cover. Those are 1. Restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. 2.
Protect our children by dismantling child tax credits. That's what we need to do. Protect our children by also dismantling any number of regulatory mechanisms that prevent them from working in grueling conditions, doing labor that, cause them to be injured permanently at such an early age. I'm talking about the mines, okay? I'm talking about how the children yearn for it. I'm talking kids need to fucking figure out where their bootstraps are, okay?
The administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. 3. Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats.
Bounty.
4. Secure our God-given individual.
They're coming for our jalapeno poppers, brother. They're Mexicans. They're coming over the border. Our bounty, brother. What bounty, man? Have you seen America recently?
Rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. And the manifesto goes on to lay out over 920 pages in 5 sections how they plan on furthering those 4 fronts. Chief among the policies promoted in the manifesto are a gutting of the administrative state and furtherance of the unitary executive theory, which we'll get into what those mean. Plus,
okay, so yeah, it is like Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, or I mean, it's the unitary executive theory has been around for a minute now. It's not like necessarily new. So they are trying to, first, they dismantled legislative power. I would say that this accelerated under the Obama administration. Like they were testing the waters, and basically they decided like, oh, we are not getting punished for obstructing. You know what I mean? Like we're just not. The parties are completely polarized at this point, and it doesn't matter. There's no like geopolitical interest that differs between like the Southern Democratic Party and the Northern Democratic Party. If you're a Democrat in the South, you're voting Democrat. If you're a Democrat in the North, you're voting Democrat. There is no like genuine regional interest at play here. So what we must do is, or what we can do is get away with being obstructionist. So much so that they're even obstructing themselves right now with the looming threat of a government shutdown. So I guess now that they have decided obstruction is not punishable, they effectively dismantled the legislative body. No more confidence there at all. And now they use the state legislatures to enact their agenda. But finally, the last piece of that puzzle is beefing up the executive, the powers that the executive office holds, so that they can have like a permanent tyranny, I guess, and get like way more ruthless about social issues.
Anti-globalist and anti-environmentalist policies to protect from infiltration of Chinese culture into American life and continue the flourishing of American commerce, plus draconian anti-LGBTQ+ policies and a centering of religion and the traditional family unit in every aspect of governance. Yeah, it's bleak. Let's get into it. By far the scariest aspect of the policy, and the one getting the most critical commentary, is the absolutist commitment to gutting the administrative state and concentrating power into the hands of the president. The administrative state is sometimes called the 4th branch of government, and there have been debates for centuries as to whether it's constitutional. You know, all those agencies like the EPA, Social Security Agency, HUD, FEMA, the Fed, the Department of Homeland Security? Yeah, all those governmental bodies that manage the administration of day-to-day operations of the country and promulgate regulations for everything from transportation to healthcare to food to clean water. That's the administrative state. It's not technically in the Constitution, but that doesn't.
This is what Vivek is talking about too, I guess. I was unfamiliar with this. Like I didn't realize that's what Republicans were referring to when they talk about the 4th branch. Okay, now I know. See? This is great. Thank you, Leisha Miller, for teaching me this. Also, everybody go give her a like and subscribe. She's great.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's not constitutional. And listen, most law students take an admin law class, and I can tell you right now that shit is dry. I barely could keep my eyes open during that class, so I won't bore you with too much detail, but this issue does take on a new and much more important meaning when you learn what Project 2025 wants to do about it. So here's some Admin Law 101. Admin law governs the structure, decision processes, and behavior of administrative agencies. Those agencies are created by statute, executive order, or by state constitutions. Admin agencies are also referred to as commissions, boards, authorities, bureaus, offices.
So what? They just want the president to do fucking everything? Or are the conservatives about to rediscover the delegation of tasks and division of labor? No. They want the president to do nothing. They want the president to do everything, but also simultaneously, they don't want the president to do anything. Because if you don't have the EPA, the president can't fucking literally, like, deal with the things, the day-to-day of the EPA or the Department of Education or the Department of Transportation or the, housing, urban development. Like, these are all government agencies that are working to make your lives bearable and livable on a daily basis. Things that I talk about all the time about why the government is so big and why that's actually not a problem and actually a good thing. Every little thing that even private corporations take advantage of. Like one of the greatest examples of this from Adam Conover's G Word, something that I've talked about quite a bit, is like the military's meteorologist department, right? Like the satellites that are in orbit and also the planes that fucking fly into goddamn hurricanes and shit. Like all of that stuff is being controlled by the government that private companies take advantage of and basically reskin and repackage and sell to you as though it's totally separate and totally their own doing. But that's not the case. The government is back there working. Okay? Just like, for example, when you go to the grocery store and you buy a fucking slab of beef, or you buy 2 pounds of chicken because you love eating straight white chicken breasts because it has the highest protein, okay? And you go there, you know full well that like that chicken is going to be up to standards, right? You're not going to eat the chicken and automatically die. You're not going to eat the chicken and automatically start hallucinating that at the top of the hour there isn't a 3-minute ad break. Okay? Like this guy didn't even care. He just said top of the hour. At that point, you're not even trying to debate me. Okay? What is going on here? You just said top of the hour. That's what you just said. You didn't even say anything else. No, didn't even try. The amount of government activity required for any commercial aviation to occur is crazy. Exactly. We just like kind of assume that stuff is happening and we take it for granted. And it's incredibly stupid. The AccuWeather CEO is lobbying the government to prevent the NOAA from releasing their forecast to the public for free because that would basically make AccuWeather a non-entity. So anyway, like I was saying, though, all that stuff, including the top of the hour, is real, and it's happening all the time. You might not recognize it because maybe you're subscribed for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, or that you've gotten lucky and gotten gifted a sub, and that's why you don't see the top of the hour ad break. But it's here, and it's now, and here's the 3-minute ad break now. Let's continue. But yeah, all that stuff the government does, and we just kind of take for granted, but it's a very important part of our day-to-day existence.
Departments, divisions, etc. They're created by executive order, meaning when the president says so, or by Congress. Say Congress passes a law saying something is illegal. In that same law, they might say, we also create this new agency, and this agency is tasked with overseeing and
Thank you,
implementing
Bill Vog,
this
for the
law.
10 gifted.
For example, the Federal Food and Drug Administration was created by the Pure Food and Drugs Act of 1906.
I hate that. The FDA, I hate that, man. I don't want the food and drugs to be controlled by a government agency. That's communism. Bathtub meth. Bathtub penicillin. I want bathtub insulin. Why is the government stopping me, an entrepreneur, from making insulin in my bathtub? Fuck you. Okay? Food safety inspection, more like food socialism inspection. Yeah, that's right. I changed the S from safety to socialism because that's socialism. Socialism is when you can't do bathtub fentanyl, and the government comes in and tells you can't do that, and then you have a massive 10-hour standoff because you have a bunch of guns because you love the Second Amendment, and then they end up tossing poison gas into your home, and then your babies die, and then you go to federal prison. Okay, but ultimately, if the FDA didn't exist, I should be able to do bathtub meth. I should be able to do bathtub fentanyl. I should be able to do bathtub insulin. Coffee pot cooked chicken in public schools.
To oversee the implementation of that law. The main functions of
Yeah, this is what happens without the FDA. Libertarian dream equals everyone gets botulism. Yes, dude. Botulism is when your body is too weak to withstand parasites, okay, and other bacteria. Excuse me, a little bit of botulism actually made Steve MRE 1987 stronger, okay, and not weaker. Weak ones die, the strong ones survive. That's how we become stronger as a nation.
Administrative agencies are to investigate, make rules, and adjudicate. That's why there's administrative law courts. They're not state or federal courts, they're separate, less formal courts where agencies can conduct hearings and enforce the regulations that they write and promote. Those admin law rulings can be appealed up to state and federal courts, but most of the day-to-day workings of administrative agencies happen within the agencies.
At this point, why not just call anything good government stuff socialism to get normies on board? Hello? Because normies hate socialism more than they hate anything else. Because there's a little thing called the Red Scare propaganda. What you are describing, even though you are a very nice person, but unfortunately a little too naive, is exactly what the Republican Party does every election cycle. And they are very effective at gutting all of those institutions by calling it socialism. I'm not even kidding. Like what you're saying is the Republican Party's like strategy.
And their courts. That doesn't mean, however, that there is zero oversight of these agencies. Like I said, rulings in the admin law courts can be appealed to state and federal courts. Congress can pass laws like the Administrative Procedure Act to rein in administrative agencies, and Congress also still controls the purse strings. The first federal admin agency was...
You said normies hate socialism more than... Outside this chat, most normies hate socialism? My friend, in this chat, normies hate socialism. What are we talking about? Even socialists hate socialism half the fucking time. It's just like, there are so many people that come in here always and are just like, oh, I'm a socialist, but I just hate whatever you're preaching.
The State Department, created in 1789 when Congress was still chock-a-block full of original framers of the Constitution, I might add, which does back up claims that the administrative bodies are implied in the Constitution. The idea behind creating these agencies, instead of having Congress or the president alone in charge of implementing the laws, because it turns out it takes a lot of work to run a country, and agencies are in charge of creating a lot of regulations. Further, agencies are staffed by subject matter experts, at least in theory. So, for example, the people in the EPA...
Putting Betsy DeVos... Betsy DeVos is technically a subject matter expert, just in the opposite direction. You know what I mean? It's like putting Mohammed Atta in charge of the FAA, okay? Like, he is a subject matter expert, it's just in the opposite direction. And that's precisely what Betsy DeVos did as well. Betsy DeVos is the Mohammed Atta of education. She spent her entire life and all of her family's dumbass money basically doing a 9/11 on Michigan schools, only to then be rewarded with the position of Secretary of Education so she could continue doing a 9/11 every day from the Department of Education, as a matter of fact. So, you know, she does have subject matter expertise, which is precisely why I said, like, in a sea of contenders, like, Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't make the cut when you got dudes who have made it their whole lives mission to, like, blow up the Department of Education. Like, a guy like Vivek is not going to be able to, like, whisper sweet nothings into Trump's ear and then automatically get that position when there are plenty of other, like, billionaire psychopaths who want that and have way more experience doing those things. Yes, her brother is Blackwater's Eric Prince, or you mean Academy, or you mean whatever the fuck it's called now, because they can't stop doing war crimes. Anyway, let's continue.
At least in theory. So, for example, the people in the EPA have spent their careers learning about environmental policy and regulation and are therefore much better positioned to implement a law than the lone president or congresspeople. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the constitutionality of administrative agencies and tends to give a lot of deference to their decisions because they are the subject matter experts. While Congress often creates the agencies, most of them technically fall under the purview of the executive branch, of which the president is the head, because the Constitution vests the power to faithfully execute the laws of the country in the president in Article 2. Admin agencies do just that. They execute the laws, and they oversee said execution in a way that a single executive couldn't, and also in a way that ensures extensive checks and balances over executive authority. But this is why the president typically appoints heads of all these agencies, because they're technically part of the executive branch. But while the heads of those agencies come and go with the politics of the time, the people operating under them are not tied to politics or a president and tend to make careers out of working in those agencies. This again...
Or a career out of, looking in the other direction And then finally, after many, many years of working in that federal agency, leaving the federal agency to immediately go and work in the private sector, with a insane salary, which is also known as the revolving door. So, yeah, they go from lobbying to being on the agency to only go back to lobbying once more. That's just how it works, which is unfortunate. However, there are still beautiful, wonderful, brilliant people out there who are actually pushing the cause forward and do legitimately believe the things that they are that they're advocating for and pursuing with the limited amount of power that these federal agencies currently have. Lena Khan comes to mind over at the FTC. As you guys know, we covered some of the stuff that she's done extensively. She's currently suing Amazon for being an e-commerce monopoly. So, yeah, technically there are a lot of people that get sucked into the revolving door, because why the fuck don't you want to be a cynical piece of shit that makes, $1 million a year at the same company that you never actually regulated when you were supposed to? The other part is the NLRB, of course. There's another group of awesome guys over there doing the most. Some of the agencies have people that have to do the good work. FDA has a bunch of people that have to do good work. Other aspects of the FDA are, of course, susceptible to regulatory capture. There's the good and the bad. Same with the EPA. Some of it is due to genuine limitations in funding, genuine legal limitations and legal hurdles placed in front of them by Congress or the Supreme Court, and others are a lack of interest in actually implementing any of the regulation that they're tasked with, because they know full well that they'll get the fucking bag when they inevitably move over to the private sector.
Creates a modicum of separations of powers and ensures that people with subject matter expertise are staffing these agencies. So sure, you can appoint the Attorney General as president, but you can't fire all the prosecutors who don't agree with you. I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston the day that Jeff Sessions was fired, and the jubilation some of those lawyers felt, it was palpable. And they don't have to worry about losing their job because of that. Or at least not for now. Okay, so this is why administrative law is considered the fourth branch of government. It wields a lot of power. Some would say too much power, which is why Project 2025 is so dead set on gutting administrative bodies. Are we on the same page? Great. You are now more of an expert on admin law than 99% of the US population. The foreword in Project 2025's policy manifesto lays out their objections to the current state of affairs. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's preening cow.
God, I hate these fucking monsters, man. The worst aspect of this is that the guys that are typing those fucking words and their children are not going to be impacted by the water supply getting filled to the brim with toxic pollutants, because they'll go and they'll, knowing full well that is happening, they'll either A, move to an area where that is not happening, okay, because they're not living in fucking Flint, Michigan or Pittsburgh, okay? They're living in an area where that is not that big of a problem. Or if that does become a big problem, because, EPA has no control over it whatsoever, then they can just buy the fucking top-of-the-line filter. You know what I mean? They always will have money in the upper middle class and above to avoid these issues that they are causing.
Cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. Okay, so they're saying there's too many bureaucrats and the president doesn't have enough power. It continues. The conservative promise lays out how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. So they're basically Ron Swansoning the government, attempting to put people in places of power to dismantle federal agencies from the inside. Except it's not a fun joke about a lovable libertarian with a mustache. It has far-reaching consequences that are made all the more dire when you learn about the unitary executive theory, the theory upon which many of the Project 2025 recommendations rely. Okay, we got admin law, unitary executive theory. We are getting into some deep constitutional law principles today, my friends. And if you want even more of a primer on constitutional law, check out my free 2-week email course called Smartass Civics. Sign up to receive daily bite-sized morsels of con law delivered straight to your inbox. You'll be beating your racist Uncle Rick at arguments by Thanksgiving. Link in the description. Okay, so unitary executive theory. It's this batshit theory that has only been made up in the last few decades. In fact, we have our good...
Which is like 90% of Republican strategies made up by like pointing to some fucking 17th century misunderstanding of the law to be like, no, this is what the founders actually intended. You don't understand. And it's always post hoc rationalizations for like a concept that at least like is supposed to be offensive to like the core of what it means to be American, which is an authoritarian singular leader that controls all aspects of your lives that you pay taxes to. It's kind of like how we designed this society. It's the one good thing that like the American Revolution did.
Good old friend Ronald fucking Reagan to blame once again for its proliferation, because of course. The theory came to prominence during Reagan, but really put down roots during the presidency of George W. Bush. Basically, the theory rejects the idea of 3 equal branches of government put in place to ensure a rigorous system of checks and balances so no one branch becomes too powerful. Instead, the unitary executive theory says actually, inherent in Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has complete control of the executive branch. So Congress can't create all of these agencies and put power in the hands of agency heads to make decisions. That power is supposed to be concentrated in the hands of the one singular executive. Reagan's lawyers came up with the idea in order to push deregulatory efforts. Bush Jr. used it to lend validity to his exercises of power after 9/11. While Obama expressed a more modest view of presidential power initially, he too exercised authority that circumvented Congress in several policy areas, especially in the deployment of U.S. military forces overseas. And then Trump, of course, came in and was like, hold my Big Mac. Let me...
The bipartisan, the bipartisan cause, baby. It's apolitical. You know what I mean? It's apolitical. You know, the one area where we will always do our very best.
We try this. And he frequently tested the bounds.
Oh my God, I got a message. Oh my God. Chat, at 2:30, I got a message from the Trump campaign. Join President Trump at Carvel, 11037 Santa Monica Boulevard in 30 minutes. You don't want to miss this. Trump is currently, I guess like at 3 p.m., he was at Carvel on Santa Monica Boulevard. Carvel Ice Cream at Santa Monica Boulevard, which is funny because I've been to that ice cream shop before. I used to live near it. That's so sick. Oh my God, I could have been there. Oh my God, if I got that text. If I looked at my text messages earlier, I could have fucking been there. And I had the chance to do the funniest thing, dude, which is kiss him.
Of acceptable exercise of executive power. From Muslim bans to the border to threatening sanctuary cities, he declared over and over that his authority extended to overriding congressional laws and funding authority. As one judge stated in response to Trump's threats against sanctuary cities, the separation of powers acts as a check on tyranny and the concentration of power. If the executive branch can determine policy and then use the power of the purse to mandate compliance with that policy by the state and local governments, all without authorization or even acquiescence of elected legislators, that check against tyranny is forsaken. Trump considered himself and his presidential powers not only beyond the bounds of Congress, but even beyond the bounds of judicial review, arguing that his travel ban was unreviewable by the federal courts. The judge in that case declared there is no precedent to support this claimed unreviewability, which runs contrary to the fundamental structure of our constitutional democracy. Even scholars who are in favor of wide-reaching executive power are appalled at Trump's behavior. John Yoo advocates in favor of the unitary executive theory and famously wrote a memo defending the legality of waterboarding under Bush. But he
Fuck, I missed this, man. I missed that big, beautiful boy, baby. I missed him. I could have been there. Oh, my God. California is Trump country, says Carvel Ice Cream. That's so sick. Fuck, that's so sick. All right, let's get back to the video.
He also wrote a New York Times editorial entitled Executive Power Run Amok, saying, even I have grave concerns about Mr. Trump's uses of presidential power. Yikes. But it appears that Project 2025 is supporting the idea that the president should constitutionally be entitled to vast levels of control over all administrative agencies, what they do, and who runs and staffs them from the top down, and Congress should have no ability to check that executive authority. Many constitutional law scholars argue that this is beyond the bounds of the Constitution, no matter how you look at it. But
yeah, except it doesn't fucking matter, because constitutional law at this point is just, again, totally partisan and totally vibes based, and there's not really much you can do about it. It kind of always has been that case. We just kind of make shit up as we go along. Much like the unitary executive theory, another completely made up concept of like strict textualism is another perfect example of conservatives just looked at something and were like, let's just make something up to not show our naked partisan efforts. Okay? It is literally a made-up legal theory that they teach in schools like it's fucking legitimate. It is completely ridiculous. Okay? All matter of like conservative analysis over legal text oftentimes revolves around like a goal that they have, as they like post hoc rationalize the goals that they have and try to justify it, as Democrats go, oh, but what about the norms? Oh, well, I guess you're still working within the bounds of the existing system. Of course, if you are an institutionalist, like a real one, and you genuinely care about it, well, the reality is, you know, those who don't care about it and just want to get their power across will do everything they can to destroy those institutions.
First administration of Donald Trump, whether or not there's a second, has already done the damage. As Jeffrey Crouch writes in his 2020 book on the unitary executive theory, yes, there are entire books about this, once precedents have been established for presidents to exercise expansive presidential powers with little pushback, future chief executives will be less likely to feel responsible for dialing them back.
Nah, I can see pussy-ass Democratic Party members being like, no, we should push this back and only allow conservatives to expand on it, only for us to just like dial it back again every time we're in power. So functionally, all you're doing is ratchet affecting the executive unitary theory as well as all other aspects of American civil liberties.
And Project 2025 is betting on just that, with its expansive overhaul of every administrative agency in the country. If he does get back in the White House, Trump has made clear that he'll finish what he started, declaring he will find and remove the radicals.
I mean, they have a canceling student loan debt, right? Yeah, remember when all the student loan debt was canceled? Which, by the way, wasn't even executive unitary theory in that situation. It is quite literally government debt owed to the executive. So it's not like it's a little bit different than that when you say, oh, student loans that we are offering, we can cancel or forgive. And guess what? It didn't fucking happen anyway. So it doesn't matter.
Who have infiltrated the Federal Department of Education and promising to demolish the deep state.
We will expel the war.
Like, that wasn't executive unitary theory. That was actually constitutionally afforded a constitutionally afforded right to the executive office. And even then, SCOTUS was like, I don't give a shit. Fuck you. You're not allowed. That's it. That's literally what happened there. It wasn't like a erosion of civil liberties, of course, or it wasn't like overreaching and doing something that's not completely in your control. It was literally within the purview of the presidency to do so, and yet they just didn't let it happen. Supreme Court was like, nah, you can't do it.
Warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. And we will throw off the sick political class that hates our country.
He plans to do this in part through what's been called Schedule F, a plan that Project 2025 appears to adopt as well. In the waning days of Trump's presidency, he passed an executive order called Creating Schedule F in the Accepted Service. This order removed employment protections from career officials, those who work in government agencies in a non-political, non-appointed position, deeming them Schedule F employees who may be fired at will by the president, presumably if they don't show sufficient loyalty or execute the duties of the agency in the way the president deems necessary, effectively stripping any sort of checks or balances on the president's ability.
Yeah, like when the president says, like, let's say the president has some really cool ideas about bleach, okay, killing COVID. Let's say the president doesn't just, like, bring that up in conversation when he's delivering an address to the nation as he was doing during, I don't know, like a pandemic or something. Let's say he follows through on that alongside hydroxychloroquine as being an effective way to, defeat COVID in the body. And then members of the administrative agencies that are supposed to say, hey, I'm a scientist. That's insane. You would kill people if we were to, like, push this out from our agencies as though it's the most effective way to get rid of COVID. You could just go, you're fired, and then fire them. And then be able to continue hiring whoever the fuck you want to that position that will actually go, yeah, you know what? That is true. We should do the bleach thing.
To control federal agencies from the top down. In fact, two former Trump White House aides, Johnny McEntee and Russell Vought, who were instrumental to Schedule F, are also involved in Project 2025, indicating a continuation of the policy by whatever conservative president next takes the White House. McEntee is quoted as saying, "Our current executive branch was conceived of by liberals for the purpose of promulgating liberal policies. There is no way to make the existing structure function in a conservative."
He means, and this goes to the heart of the matter, the HasanAbi truism. Conservatives want bad things, and they hate good things because they think good things are liberal and bad things are conservative. That is exactly what he's doing here, where he says the EPA, the Department of Education, like all matter of federal agencies that have to exist for you to enjoy living in civilized society in the way that you currently do, even though they oftentimes don't do enough. All of those things are bad, actually. And what would be good is if we destroyed them. Those are liberal and bad. Clean water, liberal and bad. In knowing full well that, like, or at least having confidence in the meat that you're purchasing, that is not going to poison you, well, that's bad, actually. That's bad, and it's liberal, and I don't like that. We should destroy that, actually. It's pussy lib shit.
Manner. It's not enough to get the personnel right. What's necessary is a complete system overhaul. And that is at the heart of Project 2025's plan. None of their policies and wedge issues work without gutting the administrative states and concentrating more power in the hands of the president. Of course, their goal is also to pack Congress and the courts.
So you just brought something up that's interesting. They want regulatory agencies banned so that Congress can get clogged with enforcing regulations, except here's the reality, okay? Those regulatory agencies were created out of necessity. Every single piece of regulation or every single regulatory agency was built with blood, okay? All of that ink was written with blood. It's not like someone was like, I'm a gay communist pussy-ass soy lib, and I want fucking the environment to be protected because I'm gay as fuck, dude. Like, that's not what Richard Nixon said. You know what I mean? Like, it had to happen. So, it's not like, yeah, Triangle Shirtwaist Factory or issues such as that did not just, these things, these protections, these regulations, the ink is with blood. And it's not like, and a lot of that, a lot of these regulations were not created, designed single-handedly by, again, some gay-ass lib who was in a position of power, who is the president, but instead by Congress to again, like, do what the Congress or previous Congresses had decided is a necessity for survival. Okay? You get it? So, like, technically, you know, you can gum up the works all day, every day inside of Congress, but, you know, this is all of these agencies were already built by Congress anyway.
With as many conservatives as possible, but that's less of a problem when you establish an executive with unchecked power. And through that unchecked power, the new conservative executive will be able to gut agencies and put people in place to further conservative agendas. Those include a push away from environmental protections in favor of becoming a fossil fuels industry leader, a move away from what they call globalism, including encouraging corporations to bring jobs back from overseas. And the foreword to the manifesto declares, "Those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers." Today, nearly every top-tier U.S. university president or Wall Street hedge fund manager has more in common with a socialist European head of state than with the parents at a high school football game in Waco, Texas.
Yeah, again, we need to do like sanity checks. Like, you need to do a critical sanity dice roll before you get to write stuff, I think, for a think tank. Like, if you think that Jeff Bezos is more in common with a fucking socialist, then ironically, the guy writing this article, I don't know what to tell you. Jamie Dimon is like, man, we really need to fucking, we really need to have a violent revolution to create a dictatorship of the proletariat, you know? He's always saying that.
Many elites' entire identity, it seems, is wrapped up in their sense of superiority over those people. But under our Constitution, they are the mere equals of the workers who shower after work.
There's nothing funnier to me than a guy who says those who run American corporations are bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more for foreign investors, and they're closer, they have more in common with socialists, when, like, your job at the Heritage Foundation is quite literally to make sure those woke socialists get everything, okay? They run society and they get everything. I think some of these guys actually forgot that wedge issues serve a purpose. I think this feels like these guys, even at the place where they churn up new wedge issues, the think tank that is designed to specifically create wedge issues, to drive a wedge, to keep people hyper-focused on, like, idiotic culture war battles, have forgotten why they do those culture war battles to begin with. It is so that shareholder profits are seen as absolute and the most important thing possible, and that we can erode the regulatory agencies specifically so that those socialist guys can make as much money as they possibly can. They want to max out. So I don't know what the fuck these guys are talking about. This is like a very Ron DeSantian take. Very Ron DeSantis tries to use big government initiatives to bully Disney approach, really. You're forgetting that, you know, at a certain point, you're supposed to scale back on the culture war stuff because that's just simply supposed to be a distraction
instead of before. And while that passage is absolutely unhinged for many reasons, there are a few things we can agree on here. American corporations absolutely do care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers. And yeah, they hide behind woke language like DEI while also being awful for workers, the environment, and equality writ large. But I think conservatives genuinely think that corporations actually believe the DEI bullshit they spew, and that it's not just a way to avoid lawsuits. Like,
yeah.
Come on, guys, I thought you were a little smarter than that. Also, I would wager a bet that the framers of our Constitution, largely products of the Academy, did not consider themselves equal to laborers who showered after work. The policy also shows an outsized obsession with China, another popular conservative talking point, saying that China is a
Well, it's a liberal talking point, too. Well, everyone's a liberal, and liberals are conservatives, so that kind of makes sense, but, like, you know. Also, yeah, remember when Chatter called her Johnny Harris? Johnny Harris would read this and go, well, this part is actually correct.
totalitarian enemy of the United States, not a strategic partner or fair competitor, and that America's elites have betrayed the American people. The solution to all of the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the trees, root and branch. The report goes on to say illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated.
There's nothing funnier to me than like being endlessly butt mad about China just fucking ripping us in our own game. It's like, pick your poison, brother. You made it happen. You know what I mean? It's so funny. It's literally a fascist manifesto. Yes, but also at the same time, it's somehow nerdier than like a lot of these like weird 4chan fascist manifestos where they're like, because they're a think tank, they have to get like, they have to still use like academic language. You know what I mean? So it comes across as like very liberal and very butthurt and very upset and tries to very nerdily dismantle the federal government. And the
border
agencies.
Sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored, not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage.
Okay, this is Ron DeSantis. Okay, Ron DeSantis is getting his notes from this, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do legitimately think that conservatives who are normally very good at like finding new things to get mad at maybe are suffering from their own success a little bit. This is Ron DeSantis. This is so informative. Oh my God. Now I know where the fuck Ron DeSantis is getting his shit from. Because I was wondering, Felix tweeted about this the other day too. Like, remember when we looked at Ron DeSantis like standing in front of a podium that read CCP, where he was talking about how he's like eviscerating Confucius Institutes in America? Yeah.
Should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Another area of grave concern for Project 2025 is the proliferation of LGBTQ ideas and transgenderism, suggesting draconian measures that many critics are saying would effectively criminalize LGBTQ expression. As the foreword to the manifesto says, the next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. It goes on to say, pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are
They write stuff like, is not a political Gordian knot inextricably binding up disparate claims about free speech, property rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. That's, yeah, shut the fuck up. Oh my God.
Child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be in prison.
Zoomers shouldn't read this. They're going to be like, oh, I agree. On God, for real, W.
Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders, and telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered.
Fuck?
As far as I can tell, to them, pornography.
Okay, first of all, yeah, if you show pornography to your classroom, yeah, you probably will be labeled as a registered sex offender. What the fuck? I think they just mean like if you do sex ed when it's if you do sex ed that's not abstinence only sex ed, then you're going to jail. I think that's what they mean. They're labeling any trans person. Yeah, that too. So here's the thing. Is 2025 a step towards central planning? Yes. But the unfortunate problem here is that it's pushed by conservatives. So it's not like centralized planning of the economy for the entire nation to prosper. It's like centralized planning of the entire economy so that like the minor benefits that you get from the civil libertarianism that exists in the United States of America, that can only exist in the United States of America due to America being the hegemonic superpower, we want to take those away too. Like no more treats, okay? You can't have like a little bit of sexual liberty as a treat. You can't like be trans in public as a treat, you know, for all of the death and destruction that we deal worldwide. So that's it. Like whatever like crumb of social autonomy that you enjoyed that allowed you to even for a brief moment forget that this is a shithole, okay? We're taking all that away from you. And there's really no reason for it either. Like, I think a lot of these people forget that, you know, those things are what keep people dull. Those are the things that make people feel like they have freedom. I myself included, for the record. I often joke about how pornography being banned in Turkey is somewhat a part of my advocacy for First Amendment rights and free speech, or why I wouldn't live in China because pornography is banned in China. Like it's mostly a joke, but it does have broader implications, right? It's not just pornography being banned at that point.
Pornography includes any discussion of being transgender or really discussion of sexual and gender identity, period, based on their reference to educators and public librarians who've been under attack for allowing children to check out such psychologically destructive books as And Tango Makes Three, a book about gay penguins, and Sparkle Boy, a book about a little kid who wears a tutu. But the rape and murder in the Bible is fine and definitely requires zero therapy later in life. A later chapter in the manifesto on the Department of Health and Human Services advocates that the president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. This would strip protections for LGBTQ folks, as well as women, it seems, given that gender identity is listed, effectively making current regulations around sex discrimination fully obsolete. The chapter further states that the next president should require agencies to maintain a biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family, meaning the next president should push to remove protections for same-sex marriage. And that's not the
like this kind of shit you would never be able to get because there's no popular support for it, so they have to do it by you know, authoritarian mandate. And it's just so odd because, like, it's not hurting anybody. You know what I mean? There is no real material benefit to doing this. Like, there's no capitalism reason for it. At that point, you're just, like, being a bully for the sake of being a bully. Very odd.
The only reference to the Bible or the sanctity of the family in the policy document. Its 920 pages are littered with references to the Bible and Christianity and the traditional family unit. The foreword declares the most important community in each of our lives and the life of the nation is the family. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of black children. There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father, which
I legitimately feel like they wrote this so that liberals would go out and vote, and even like leftists would go out and vote in fear that like Republicans will come and do the things that are like comically villainous.
First of all, that's some old school Republican language. The loud welfare queen wolf whistle of Reagan rings on into the night, I see. But also, frankly, as someone without a dad, I can confirm that actually the health insurance I had through the state as a poor recently graduated 22-year-old paid for the therapy that I needed to fill that hole. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. But that's not the point. The point is to demonize single mothers, especially—
Yeah, but you're a libtard, so that's bad. You know what I mean? Fucking got him. That's what happens when the state gives you funds to get therapy.
Especially black ones, and place the blame of all of society's woes on the backs of individuals who just need to work harder to maintain their traditional family units, and not on the system that leads to impoverished single mothers in the first place, like, I don't know, the mass incarceration of black fathers, for example. One of the main stated goals of the policy is securing our God-given individual rights to live freely against the woke agenda. The opening note of the manifesto states, "Today the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent." In the chapter on COVID-19 policies, the author asks, how much risk mitigation is worth the price of shutting down churches on the holiest day of the Christian calendar and far beyond, as happened in 2020? What is the proper balance of lives saved versus souls saved? And the fact that these people think that the federal government should be concerned with saving souls tells you enough about the belief system of the people who want to overrun our government. The chapter on the U.S. Department of Labor states, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and until very recently, the Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day, and blames consumerism and secularism for the decline in Sabbath observance, calling on Congress to encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath. Which sounds kind of nice except for the whole Christian nationalism thing. The chapter on the U.S. Department of State says that special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially the status of Middle Eastern Christians and other religious minorities, as well as the human trafficking endemic to the region. But of course we know which religious freedom they're concerned with.
Who wrote this, man? It's like so nutty. It's so weird and specific, and I'm not entirely certain how you could sell this to the broader majority, but I guess you kind of don't have to. I mean, they're doing this for two reasons. One, because they do want to disseminate this in the form of propaganda through like Fox News and everyone else, but also I guess like they want the foot soldiers to know like this is our next step, right? Did the 4chan and Reddit groypers all get jobs in think tanks? I think they did. I'm not even kidding. I think like a lot of those guys that spent, the early 2000s and, the early 2010s when they were like 20 to 25 years old, they finally got to the age group where they can like get these think tank jobs. And that's how they're operating. This guy's still chirping. Protecting kids is not bullying. Oh, now it's about her. What's wrong with traditional family? Ah, observant you are. People on TikTok and Reddit claim the plan calls for camps too, with open-ended definitions of who goes to them. I just don't understand, like, what more these fucking freaks want. You know what I mean? They're like, we have to ban trans porn because I can't stop jerking off to it. Like, that's basically half of the fucking article. You know what I mean? Like, they've dedicated entire pages to like how hard they nut to trans porn and why it must be banned. Like, what are you doing? The fuck? You're so weird, bro. Keep that shit to yourself. You know what I mean?
Here. In all of this, Project 2025 essentially creates a blueprint for the proliferation of a Christian nationalist agenda at every level of government. You guys, that's just one pillar of Project 2025. This 920-page manifesto is pillar number 1, but it is the most extensive because it lays out the foundation for everything to come and how the next president should go about pushing every conservative talking point imaginable, all with the backdrop of eviscerating federal agencies and concentrating as much power as possible in the hands of the president. Pillar number 2 is the creation of a personnel database, what they're calling the conservative LinkedIn, which sounds like hell on earth, from which to pull qualified conservatives to place at every level of government. They have an application to be part of the personnel database linked on their website. So I thought, hell, maybe I'll apply. Y'all are always telling me that I should get involved in government. They even had boxes I could check saying that I'm liberal and progressive, so it seems like maybe I'm welcome too. I just answered a few questions, and they were all interestingly worded as though they were trying to woke bait me, like, the gender wage gap is the result of prejudice and discrimination, agree or disagree? Or, the US needs nationalized healthcare, agree or disagree? I answered honestly, attached my resume, and submitted. A few minutes later, I received a confirmation email that my application had been received. We'll see what happens next. Seems like a good way to keep abreast of developments. Seems like definitely something that could easily, be overrun with liberal and progressive applications. It would really be too bad if, like, every person who watched this video submitted an application to be added to the database. Seems like it would make their job a lot harder to find the good conservative.
Damn, if only we had, like, a coder in the community who could fast track and streamline that process so they could, like, flood fake applications into it. I mean, surely that'd be terrifying. That'd be terrible. And I hate that. And I don't want that. Shonda Black. I would never want that to happen. You know what I mean?
Candidates in all those applications. I mean, that's just like something I was thinking about. I'm just spitballing here, okay? I left the link to the application in the description just so that you can do your own independent research and form your own opinions. The third pillar of Project 2025 is training. According to the Project 2025...
It's not actually. I feel like it's not illegal. I think it's like frowned upon, but I don't know if it's illegal. I don't think so. If that was the case, then Sean would be in prison. He has done this so many times. like nonstop, is what I would say if he had done it. But of course he has not, because I would never harbor criminals in my community.
Website, the Presidential Administration Academy covers topics ranging from how to identify appointee positions for which you qualify to navigating the necessary background and security.
Yeah, we unintentionally and not deliberately DDoS the fucking applying site by just simply watching this video, but
security clearance processes to recognizing and addressing the dangers of the administrative state. Potential appointees will learn the intricacies of the federal budget process, how to work with the media, managing congressional and stakeholder relations, the federal procurement process, and dozens of other topics that provide the knowledge and skills you'll need to be an effective presidential appointee. Current certificate programs offered are called Prepared to Serve, Conservative Governance 101, and Conservative Governance Advancing Policy, with more on the way. It appears that the application to take those courses is the same one to be added to the personnel database. So if you, for some reason, decided to, I don't know, submit an application and overwhelm their personnel database, maybe you would also be given access to these courses. I'm not sure. Definitely do your own research. The final pillar, pillar number 4, is the 180-day playbook. This appears to be yet to be written, but according to the website, the playbook would include a comprehensive, concrete transition plan for every single federal agency to implement in the first 180 days. This mirrors the plan that the Heritage Foundation gave to Reagan when he entered office, allowing him to hand off vetted conservative policy initiatives to each agency without having to do much work on his own. The Heritage Foundation, which is the creator of Project 2025, is seeking to redo what they did with Reagan, but put it on steroids. That 920-page manifesto is a good indication of the types of recommendations that they'll give to each agency. Okay, so I hope that I have sufficiently communicated the gravity of this plan. If a Republican wins the presidency in 2024, they will be handed this plan. They, of course, aren't required to do anything with it, in theory, but given that Trump and DeSantis, the two frontrunners for the nomination, are both batshit fucking off their damn rockers, it seems likely that whoever wins the nomination would wholeheartedly back most, if not all, of the policy items put forward.
yeah, I mean, this is already like the strategy, you know what I mean?
By Project 2025. Lord knows Trump isn't going to read any of this, so he'll likely just hand it off, as is, to be implemented by people who can read good and stuff. So what do? We make extra damn fucking sure that the Republican doesn't win the election in 2024. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation, my friends. Do I want Biden? No, but he is once again the best choice that we have. You also need to vote in Democratic senators and representatives as well. You need to bring your roommates and your partners and your family members and make sure that they vote. You need to call them ahead of time and be like, hi, what's your plan for voting? You need to be thinking about this early and often. You need to be just a little bit scared. Not to be fear-mongery, but this is genuinely a terrifying prospect for our government that feels really, really imminent. Of course, any of these unilateral actions that a Republican president could theoretically take could then also be challenged in courts, but he's packed the courts, including the Supreme Court, and the result of attempting to implement all of these new policies in the first 180 days would be sheer chaos. John F. Kelly, Trump's literal chief of staff, has said it would be chaotic. It just simply would be chaotic because he'd continually be trying to exceed his authority, but the sycophants would go along with it. It would be a non-stop gunfight with the Congress and the courts. Even if the theoretical Republican president couldn't get through all of these policy proposals, it would still create a level of
The dumbass anti-electorals Mandy's in the chat will hate this. Do we even have any fucking anti-electorals Mandy's at this point in the chat? I think everyone is just done. They're fatigued. Like, even the anti-electoralist guys are like, I don't really care. Whatever. Like, people don't even care enough to make to have a position on, like, urging people to not vote. You know what I mean? Because the number one anti-electoralist body is the Democratic Party, okay? There is nothing better than putting up a 800-year-old man as like the singular force that can defend American democracy and defeat Donald Trump, knowing full well that by his second term, with, by the way, no acceptable substitute, Kamala Harris is not that person, knowing full well that like he is not going to make it past the finish line, right? They did that shit, and they made their bed, and now they're going to fucking lay in that bed.
Chaos that could further undermine trust in the government as a whole. The good news, if you could call it that, is that Project 2025 is radical. It does not comport with how the majority of Americans feel. 71% of Americans support same-sex marriage. 85% of Americans believe abortion should be legal under at least certain circumstances, and only 13% say it should be illegal under all circumstances. 69% of Americans believe that the US should take steps to become carbon neutral by 2050. The number of adults in the US who identify as Christian has fallen by 25% since the 1990s. For most people, Democrats, centrists, and even some Republicans, Project 2025 goes way too far. And
yeah, but it doesn't matter because this is not about democracy at all. A lot of Republican initiatives are not about democracy. It's directly about eroding the democratic process while also trying to make it seem like it's the most democratic thing you can do. That's precisely how they operate, right? Like, ain't nobody's asking for like fucking making it illegal to be like a trans 14-year-old who attends a swim meet. Like, who the fuck is like, this is my one issue, dog. You gotta do this. Okay? It's so dumb.
And represents an upheaval and existential threat that is beyond what most people want to see in the US government. So my hope is that the more people who know the actual contents of the Project 2025 plan, the more people will get out and vote to make sure the hellscape it presents never comes to fruition. Sharing this.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's in many respects, like, unless the Democratic Party does a better job of getting people motivated to vote and stuff. Oh, Brant, by the way. Bro, do you know where this is? It's Carvel on Santa Monica in West LA. Carvel, the ice cream shop on Santa Monica in West LA. It's like one of those random malls, like near. He was in Anaheim giving a speech, California Republicans, and then he just, because he wanted to see his fans, we missed it. I would have loved to go to this. Fuck. Fucking losers, dude. Oh God, I do hate, like, as much as I hate the Electoral College, it does make me so happy knowing full well that like none of these guys' votes matter. You know what I mean? Like, that does give me a little bit of fucking hope. It makes me feel good a little bit. It's like, dude, vote extra hard, bitch. You know, go ahead, keep voting, dog. Fuck you gonna do about it, okay?